Hi, I'm Terry Kemple. I'm going to talk to you about the UK's experience with the Green Toolkit and other net zero carbon initiatives. This is a pre-recorded video, but there will be a live question and answer session at the end, so please post any questions, comments, etc. in the chat if that's available. I'm a retired family doctor from Bristol in England. I've had various roles in green issues in primary care. I have no conflicts of interest. I am not a climate change expert, but I am from the generation that made it all worse. Sorry about that. What the climate change experts is saying is we all need to do more and do it faster. Because carbon dioxide is going up in our atmosphere and that will cause climate change. There are other greenhouse gases, notably methane, nitrous oxide and the F gases, which are propellants in things like metered-dose inhalers and asthma. And those F gases can be typically 2,000 to 3,000 times more greenhouse gas warmers than carbon dioxide. The way we're going, we know that we're likely to reach almost 3 degrees C by the end of this century rather than stay below 1.5. So countries will experience many or all of the problems of flooding, heat stress, water stress, wildfires, hurricanes, sea level rise, and unpredictably mass migrations. Turkey is likely to experience extremes of heat with less rainfall, possibly an increase in global sea level, and of course lower income countries will suffer most. The per capita CO2 emissions in Turkey are about the same as the United Kingdom. United Kingdom has come down a lot. Turkey appears to be flattening out. And Turkey's net zero target is for 2053 at the moment. But we're going to talk mostly about healthcare today. And healthcare in countries like the UK and probably Turkey accounts for about 5% of the country's carbon footprints or carbon emissions. And that breaks down across the health service to about 20% of it usually comes from primary care. And in primary care, it's arrow 1 on the right, you can see that arrow 2, medicines and chemicals, makes the bulk of our carbon footprint. Arrow 3, and a large part of that is just from metered-dose inhalers in the UK. And arrow 4 is the transport of patients and staff backwards and forwards. So why don't we do more? Here are some commonly given reasons why people don't do more. So I'm going to talk about those a little bit more in a moment. We surveyed family physician trainees and educators in England last year, and in my part of the world, the southwest of England, we found that 70% had no planetary health learning or training, 80% felt they had insufficient learning and training, more than 50% were not aware of the 3 main resources that were freely available to them, and 25% were not aware of any of the GP resources that were available to them, which includes the toolkits. So, let's go back to the beginning. It was back in the 1890s that atmospheric carbon dioxide was thought to alter surface temperature through the greenhouse effect. And in 1893, Munch saw the setting sun turn the clouds a blood red and sensed an infinite scream passing through nature. And his famous picture, the scream, was originally called the Scream of Nature. And that scream is getting louder and louder and louder. So, why didn't I do more? Well, at the beginning, obviously, nobody really knew that it was happening, even though we'd known since the 1890s it was a risk. And in 1962, this was the first big environmental book about poisoning the planet, documenting the adverse environmental effects caused by pesticides. And this was required reading when I was at school when I was 16. But I really didn't think that was really relevant to me. Back in the 1960s, that's when most of the green and environmental movement starts, like Greenpeace, World Wildlife Fund, and Friends of the Earth. And importantly, this is when we first had this picture of the Earth from the moon, and that showed Earth to be a small, finite planet rather than a source of infinite resources. When I was in medical school, after my second year, I went on a working holiday around the United States. And when I went, the bin on the left was the sort of bins that we had for garbage refuse that we had in my family home. When I was a child, we had two of them. One was full of ashes from burning coal, and the other had a small amount of the debris of household living. And it was only in San Francisco in 1972 that I saw my first recycling bin when I was visiting friends. And in that bin was newspaper and other paper, cans and bottles. There was no plastic. And the media were becoming aware of this. In 1981, even there was a TV program warning about the global warming. I didn't see that particular program. But I think nobody was really talking about scary things back then. In 1992, that was when we had the first Earth Summit in Rio. And again, people didn't really like feeling guilty about climate change, but probably didn't know what to do. In 1996, my children's school had a recycling project, and so my children were coming home talking about recycling, which we weren't doing at home at the time. And I think the message there, if you want somebody to change, a sort of middle-aged man to change, then the best way to get them to change is get their children to tell them to change. So at that time, it didn't really seem that people cared too much about this problem. In 2008, the UK brought out a Climate Change Act and an oversight committee which compelled the government to take action. And by 2012, when I was age 60, I was feeling I really should be doing something, but I didn't know what to do about it in my practice. And about the same time, Bristol was appointed Green Capital of Europe when we were in the European Community. And as a result of that, a number of us came together and brought different solutions to different parts of a puzzle about what to do. So we started to answer the question, what can we do in our practice? And we came up with over 100 actions that say what we should be doing, why we should be doing, and how to do it. And we used an existing platform which had been set up a few years earlier by UK's National Union of Students. In 2020, the UK was the first National Health Service to set zero net targets, and the targets are to become net zero by 2040 and net zero plus by 2045. So that plus involves all the things that are bought into the health service. In 2023, last year, at the Conference of the Parties, which is the United Nations annual conference on this issue, what the world's governments and other organisations finally agreed is that something needs to be done. And now we just need to agree the what, the how, and the by when. But even though countries like the UK have got a Climate Change Act and Oversight Committee, it's moving more slowly than most of us would like. And even last year, our High Court said that governments must actually get on track to deliver climate change and be compliant with the Climate Change Act. And on the 31st of March, the government brought out these sorts of solutions to what is going to be done. And the general judgment is that the government is not acting fast enough and is doing too little too late. So why don't we do more? Well, there are other reasons as well. So Gus Speth, who's about my age, is an environmental lawyer in the US. And he used to think that the top global environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change, and that 30 years of good science could address these problems. Now he believes that the top problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy, and we need spiritual and cultural transformation to do that, but we just don't know how to do it. So in the face of that, we need relentless, stubborn optimism. And those are the words of Christiana Figueres, who was the co-chair at the 2015 Paris Climate Talks. And what we don't need is environmental grief, climate depression, eco-anxiety, futilitarianism, or just being a doomer. So I hope that sort of makes us all stop and think about what we need to do. So what is to be done? Well, I'm going to use a parallel from the early 20th century when a leader of a social democratic movement was getting frustrated because his movement was stalled. Nothing was happening fast enough, and it seemed to be in limbo. So that leader of a social democratic movement was Lenin, and they'd had a period on the rise and consolidation of the theory and program of social democracy, as it was called at the time. And then the second period was a scene of social movement with an upsurge of the masses of the people as a political party. And these both are similar to what's been happening in climate change. The science has been there. There's been a movement recently with Extinction Rebellion, Greta Thunberg and others. But now we're in this third phase, a third period where we've got disunity, dissolution and vacillation. And as our government recently demonstrated, when it was urged to say how it was going to achieve net zero, instead of focusing on net zero, it started talking about energy security and backing away from the net zero challenge. So Lenin's answer, when in his pamphlet about what is to be done, he had a very brief reply: put an end to this third period of disunity, dissolution and vacillation. And that's what we all need to do now regarding climate change. Because we need many more doing everything possible rather than just the few doing every impossible thing. In family medicine, how do we improve, protect planetary health? What can we all do about it? What do we need? Well, we need understanding. We need to understand that low carbon is the only direction of travel. It's better for our patients, it's better for our populations, it's better for our practices. And we need knowledge. How do I do it? And how do we do it? What we're trying to do is avoid the unmanageable. So we need to reduce as much as possible our global greenhouse gas emissions. And we also manage the unavoidable because climate change is coming. So we have to adapt to what is coming. And only last month, the monthly mean CO2 concentrations went over 420 parts per million. So the carbon emissions are still rising in our atmosphere. If we look at primary care, family practice, then this is what we see when we look at it in the UK. We know that 60% of our carbon footprint, carbon emissions come from our clinical work. 13% of that is just from the propellants in metered dose inhalers, and the other 40% is what we have from just running an office. If we look at our non-carbon clinical footprint, then we can see that electricity and gas and patient travel and staff travel are major components in that carbon footprint. And if we look at electricity in our carbon footprint, we know that things perhaps unexpectedly like fridges cause huge amounts more of our carbon footprint than we probably thought. We also need to manage the unavoidable. That's adapting for the climate change. And in the UK, we know we're going to get more frequent and worse flooding. We know we're going to get our extremes of temperature. We're thinking we'll probably get shortages, risk to our natural capital, risk to our food production, and the new and emerging pests and diseases that come from changes in our climate. But for every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple and wrong. We have to find the answers that are clear, simple and not wrong. What can family physicians and staff do? Well, there's obviously the individual actions we can take at home. There's our work-based actions. Some of us can educate others. Some of us may have an influence on the media, influence on research, and even influence on governments. With individual actions, the simplest thing you can do is check your own carbon footprint. If you've not done that, then it's the first thing that you should do. And it's very easy to do. There are simple websites which give you that information, and it takes around about 5 to 10 minutes to actually roughly work out your own carbon footprint. We have got on our UK Health Alliance for Climate Change a carbon literacy guide, and that will be a good starting point to learn more about it. The first point in carbon literacy is what's the volume of 1 tonne of carbon dioxide? Well, it's roughly the same volume as the volume of a normal-sized hot air balloon. And 1 tonne is roughly the same weight as a adult female giraffe. Your work-based actions, what can you do? Well, you need to decide what you can do in your practice. Use a free Green Impact for Health toolkit. You can add sustainability to the agenda of your meetings, because if you don't talk about it, you won't do anything. But if you have it on your agendas, you will talk about it and you will do something. And remember, because 60% of the family practice carbon footprint is from medical treatments, you need to involve your patients. So if you share the decision making and get your patients informed consent, you're likely to reduce over-investigation, reduce over-diagnosis, and reduce over-treatments. And you should always be asking, is it good for the patient and good for the planet? Our toolkit in the UK, which we started in 2014, was based on this National Union of Students website, and by the end of 2022 we had 1,500 practices with 2,000 users, and that's around about 15% of all the UK practices. We've moved over to a new National Union Students website which has much greater functionality in 2023, and I'll show you that in a moment. So in deciding what you can do in your practice, toolkits are helpful, like ours, because it's free, it's easy to use, it's designed by GPs for GPs, it improves your sustainability, it saves money, and it's had a good recent independent review. Our original website looked like this, and I'm showing this because the coloured tabs are a good way to show the actions that we actually talk about taking. So we're talking about taking actions regarding our water use, our prescribing, our travel and exercise, our quality improvement, our zero carbon, our news and communication, our food and drinks, our vulnerable groups, our energy saving, our healthy planet, our waste and recycling, our learning, and our social prescribing. Our new website looks like this. It's very easy to use. There's a video on the home page which will tell you how to use it, and it's very simple to register. I won't go into too much detail about how to use this, but if you want to know the contents, then there will be a way of sharing that with you later on. But this actual website is meant really just for UK practices. So individual users can join their teams, and then when you've joined a team, you've got your own individual dashboard homepage which tells you jobs which you have rated as a priority and jobs which have been assigned to you. When you go into the actual toolkit, there are ways of filtering it to find the actual actions that you want to take, and they tell you what to do, why to do it, and how to do it. And again, as I say, there's lots of these different filters so you can get down to exactly what you want to do in the team. And there are different levels: bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, with degrees of difficulty. If we look at this one on prescribing, there's the criteria. It tells you what you should be doing. It then gives you further information on why do it and how to do it. Then we have students who go in and audit the actions, because you can apply for awards and prizes with this. And then this is the section where you add either your own text or download files to demonstrate that you've done it. But even if you don't actually want to participate in the toolkit, there's another way of doing it, which is to download all the criteria through a spreadsheet. And that looks like this. You can see all the action criteria and all the further information. And if you want, we can share this sort of information with you so that you can sort of see the things which are appropriate to your practice here in Turkey, and perhaps adapt it for your own toolkit. In our toolkit, we have other things there, other helps, like frequently asked questions and past newsletters which have current information. So what else is our Royal College of GPs doing in the UK? Well, in the new strategy from our college for 2023 to 26, included responding to the climate emergency as a priority. The college had already declared a climate emergency, but it wasn't deemed for some reason a priority. Now it is a priority. So since 2022, all of our 32 local areas have a lead GP for climate change, and there's a national leads group. Since January 2023, we have learning modules on climate change and planetary health, a practice decarbonisation guide, and links to other net zero aids. In February 23, the Green Impact for Health Toolkit moved to this new improved website, and just 10-11 days ago we rolled out a new primary care development advisor service, which will help practices train in carbon literacy, carbon footprinting, and individual practice decarbonisation. That's across England in the UK. We also have other organisations in primary care family practice, such as Greener Practice, which developed from a group of enthusiasts, and now we have networks across the country. And the idea there is that you can find support from these networks and access to resources which will help you become greener. We also have other organisations like the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare, which is a charity which was set up about 14 years ago, and that's one of the sort of national sites for training in green issues. So, summary and next steps. We are all in this great transition from our old life of profligacy, profiteering and politics poisoning the planet to a new and hopefully better life protecting planetary health. And you can be part of the solution, not just the problem. Because we want, as with all businesses, family practice to have a triple bottom line where we report both the social, environmental and economic impacts of outcomes of what we do. So, how can you do more and spend more time with the patient when you have increasing workload, an ageing population and multimorbidities, underinvestment in healthcare, overloads of information and regulation, constant technological developments, reorganisations and changes that undermine your delivery of care, and of course the aftermath of the COVID pandemic? You just need to take a first step with just one patient a week. So I'm suggesting that your next patient, your first patient on next Monday, or the day which you find is your easiest day, start trying to do things which are good for the patient and good for the planet with that one patient. And then with experience, build on that and extend that culture, that mindset to the rest of your work. Then the second thing you need to do is really add sustainability to the agenda of your meetings. It makes a difference. If it's on the agenda, people will talk about it. If it's not on the agenda, nobody talks about it. Really, the most difficult thing is persuading people that it is possible. But if it's a big hoax and we've created a better world for nothing, we've still done good. Thank you. So if everything's working to plan, we should have time now for live questions and answers. Thank you again.